Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I'm going to be doing another book review for you, and that is for Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erikson. This is the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. This is a series that I have been wanting to read for a long time. I've heard a lot about it over the last couple of years that I've been getting into fantasy, and I always heard, if you've heard of Malazan, then you have heard that all of the things about it, that it's very difficult to get into. A lot of people drop it after one or two books because it is very complex and there's a lot of different characters, a lot of different plot lines, all that stuff. It's not the easiest series to get into for a lot of people. And so I was quite intimidated, to say the least, to start reading this book, but I have now done it. And so I'll be giving you my thoughts. This review will maybe be a little bit different than some of my other reviews because this is a very unique book compared to many of the others that I've read. I'll still be going over, the positives and negatives like I usually do, but some of the stuff that I talk about will be a bit different than the usual. So just because this is such a unique case where I feel like a lot of the stuff that I normally talk about isn't quite as applicable here because it is a book that I had a very different experience with than I would with most other ones because of the aforementioned complexity and difficulty and things like that, which I did struggle with this book. To get that out of the way first, I think I was able to follow some of the stuff okay, but there was a lot of jumping around and things like that, so it was not the easiest to keep track of everything that was going on. Even now, I'm not going to talk much about the plot of this book because, to be quite honest, I couldn't even summarize what happens in this book because it just jumps around so much and there's so much going on that even though I can remember certain things from this book, I can't connect them together in my head to tell you what happened in this book as an overview. So I do apologize for that, but yeah, so basically, long way of saying this review is going to be a little different than other ones. So to get started, of course, with positives, first thing that I want to talk about is actually the way this book is written, which, like I said, this book is a little difficult to get into, which I'm going to be bringing up throughout this review because it is something that was constantly in my mind as I was reading it. I was like, what is going on and all this stuff. But so I apologize. That'll be something I'll mention frequently in this review because, first of all, it's just something that I experienced a lot, and also it's the big thing that people talk about with this book. So I want to talk about how each of the things that I experienced with this book relates to that, because I feel like that might be important for someone who's looking to get into this book. So I do appreciate the way that this book was written. I think the writing style was really good. I really just enjoyed reading Erikson's writing. I think in this book, and I've heard this is even one of the least good books in Malazan, so even if he improves later in the series, like I really enjoyed just the style of writing and the prose in this book. I just enjoyed the structure of it in general. I don't know necessarily if enjoyed is actually the right word, but I appreciated it. The way this book is that it jumps around a lot between different point of view characters. If I show you in the front of the book, the front of the book actually has a dramatis personae. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it also has a glossary at the back of the book. If you read this book for the first time, definitely use those because I did, and it helped me keep track of things a little better. But this is the dramatis personae. And this is more of the dramatis personae. For those who don't know, this is the list of all of the important characters in this book. There are around 90 characters in the Dramatis Personae. Not all of them are POV characters. I think there's around 30 or 35 POV characters, but this book jumps between POVs a lot. Like every few pages, at least, sometimes less than that. You are jumping between POVs, which is a style that I appreciate because you can really, it just gives this sense that there's a lot of stuff going on. And I also just enjoyed, the book feels epic. Like you get the sense that there is a wider world beyond what is in this book because this book only covers a very small section of the world of Malazan. And you really get a sense that there is so much more out there, and you get a sense that there's just a lot of stuff going on with a lot of different characters. And even though I could not comprehend and understand all of the complexities of the storylines in this book, of the characters in this book, I really appreciate that that's there, because I think that's something that, you know, some people will really enjoy, and it's something that, even though made it a little more difficult for me, is something that I really appreciated, and something that, you know, I thought was really cool. I apologize, this point's a little rambly. I'm just kind of talking. But yeah, I just like the way this book was structured, even though it didn't quite make it easier for me to get into. It's something that I could appreciate, because I think it takes real skill to be able to competently and consistently do the kind of writing that Erikson does in this book. So I really appreciated that about it. And just the way that that enhanced the book itself, the story it was telling, which again, I couldn't follow very well, but I feel like that really enhanced that feeling of epic scope, not only for this book, but for the entire world of Malazan. Another thing I really liked, to get more into something that I normally would talk about, which is the characters. Again, there's a lot of characters in this book, and I could not even list all of them, even all the POV characters, but there were some that I did particularly enjoy. For example, I'm going to reference the Dramatis Personae here just to make sure I don't miss anyone. I apologize. But I really enjoyed Ganos Perrin, who's one of the main characters in this book. There's a handful of characters that you get a lot of POVs from. I feel like that character is one of the main ones. I also really enjoyed Whiskey Jack and Tattersail, who I feel like are also kind of two of the main POV characters. I really enjoyed Sari, who's a character in this book that was kind of fun as well. I really enjoyed Krupp, or Kruppa, however you say his name. He was always a very easy character for me to tell when it was from his point of view, because he speaks about himself in the third person, which I really appreciated, because that made it a little easier for me to get like, okay, I'm in this character's head right now, so I appreciated that a lot. My favorite character in this book, though, is Anomander Rake, who does not appear frequently in this book. He does appear, you know, throughout the book, but not extensively, and you don't get any POVs from him. You only see him through other people's eyes. And from what I've heard, that remains consistent throughout the series. I heard things about this character before I read this book, just that he was a really interesting and cool character, and I definitely got that feeling in this book. A lot of my favorite moments in this book happened because of something that Anomander Rake did. And as a character that I find very interesting, very fascinating, and I'm really excited to see more of. So there's that. I really enjoyed the characters. Their interactions were interesting. And again, even though I cannot remember every single detail about every single character and all that stuff, they were enjoyable to read. Probably the biggest point in favor of this book for me, though, which maybe I should have started with, but the biggest point in favor for this book for me was I really loved the individual scenes in this book. Again, not to hammer on this point too much, I apologize, but the overarching story, the overarching plot is kind of it went a little over my head. But there are scenes in this book that I vividly remember. There are scenes, like, I enjoyed the process of reading this book in its entirety, even though I wasn't entirely sure what was going on, because most of the scenes were really interesting, and it had interesting stuff going on, interesting discussions between characters, interesting stuff that they were doing. Again, going back to Anomander Rake, he has several scenes in this book that I really enjoy. There's like this battle scene at the beginning, which I loved. There's a scene at the end. Anomander Rake is not a human, and that is emphasized many times throughout this book. People say he's not really a human, and then the moment where you find out what he really is at the end of this book was awesome, and I loved it. There's a scene with another character who, again, I apologize, I'll have to reference this again, the Jagdhunt Tyrant, who comes in a little towards the end of this book. The couple scenes with that character I loved. I thought that was awesome. Like those few scenes that I've mentioned, and there's other ones as well, were some of my favorite scenes in the book, and they stuck in my memory, even though, again, I couldn't keep track of all the overarching plots and all that kind of thing. I loved the individual scenes in this book, and that's what made me really invested in keeping reading, because if I wasn't into the individual scenes, I might not have finished this book, to be honest. But I was always interested in something that was going on, which really helped. Just one or two other quick little things because I've been talking for quite a while about all of this stuff. Another couple positive things. I did really enjoy the magic in this book. The magic system in this book is not really explained. Really, nothing is very well explained in this book. You're not force-fed information or exposition about how the world works or how the magic works or anything. But the displays of magic in this book were super cool. And even though I have no idea how it works, it was very entertaining to see. Also, great action in this book. I enjoyed a lot of the action scenes. Some of them were, smaller scale. Some of them were very big and epic, like the one at the beginning I talked about felt very epic and was kind of, to me, kind of like, okay, this is what you can potentially expect later in the series. And I was like, okay, I'm in, because it was awesome. So stuff like that. A lot of the stuff in this book was just really well done. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of actual negative points to point out with this book, aside from the fact that, yes, it is a struggle to get to and it is difficult. Because it jumps around between characters, it jumps between plot lines. There's a lot of different plot lines going on with different characters who are in different places doing different things, and there's a lot of different characters and all this stuff, so there's just so much going on. It is difficult to follow, and you need to really, I feel like you would get a lot out of this if you did a lot of note taking and stuff, which I didn't do because I wanted to just see how this book was for me, just going in, just reading the book. And I did go through some other stuff like some chapter summaries and things like that as well, just on the side for a few things, just to see if that would help too. So that might help you a bit, things like that. There's a lot of resources online for helping people to get more into this. So I would recommend doing that if that's something you feel like you would like to do. And it's something that I did a little bit as well, which kind of helped me along as I was going. And even before I recorded this review, I just listened to a couple of videos by a channel that I love and would highly recommend called The Book Guy, who did a couple of videos about Malazan recently, which I had already seen, but I watched them and listened to them again before doing this review just to kind of see if that would help me kind of collect my thoughts after reading this, and they did. So would definitely recommend checking out that channel and those videos. But anyways, that's pretty much the only negative point I have for this book, which is just that it is kind of difficult to get into and a little difficult to comprehend and understand. But I feel like that is also part of the appeal for a lot of people, and it's something that even though it's something that maybe made my enjoyment of this book a little lesser, and all of that kind of thing, it's something that I still appreciate and something that I kind of like about this book. It's something that is an interesting writing choice, and even though it's not something that I love, it's something I can at least appreciate. So all that said, that is pretty much my general thoughts on this book. Like I said at the beginning, gonna be a bit of a weird review, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I did actually really enjoy this book overall, even though, again, it was hard for me to really understand everything going on. It was just enjoyable to read, and which is something that I was a little concerned about, because going into this book I was super intimidated, and for good reason, I think, now that I finished this. But with that said, I was also concerned that the moment-to-moment reading of this book would not be interesting to me, and so I would just get bored or overly confused and just not understand anything or not be interested in anything going on, which is what I was afraid would happen with this. But even though the overall stuff going on in this book did go over my head a bit, I was still really into the individual scenes with all the different characters, and there was always something that I thought was interesting going on. Plus the fact that I just enjoy Erikson's writing style, which I think helps as well. So overall, pretty positive thoughts on this one, despite the difficulty I had with it. My rating for this one overall would probably be an 8 out of 10. It's something that I could see rising if I understood it more. So maybe if I ever reread this, maybe once I finish the series or something like that, it may go up. Because I think there, like I said, was not a lot in here that I just didn't enjoy. I enjoyed this book throughout pretty consistently. So there wasn't a whole lot that I wasn't really into. So I could definitely see this going up as I get more into the series and things like that. But for now, an 8 out of 10 is where I stand. It was very enjoyable, but the lack of comprehension and understanding because of the complexity of the book definitely brought it down for me. And that's really the only thing that brought it down for me is that I enjoyed it, but it was not quite something I could wrap my head around entirely. But I am looking forward to continuing this series. I intend to at least try out the next couple of books in this series and see how I like them. I probably, if this book is any indication of how I'll feel about the rest of the series, I probably will finish it because I enjoyed it enough that I would be willing to read 9 more books like this. So we'll see how that goes, but I am intending to at least read up to book 2 or 3 and see how I'm feeling by then. So I look forward to doing that sometime in the future. So let me know down in the comments if you have read Gardens of the Moon and what you thought of it. If you also were extremely confused, or maybe somehow by some miracle you weren't, or anything like that, or if you finished this series, what you think of this book in retrospect, how you think it compares to the rest, what your experience is with this series, if it gets a little easier as it goes along, or if it's always still something that's kind of difficult to get a hold of. All that kind of stuff, let me know down in the comments. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.